I have to tell you, I'm really excited to be here tonight to interview David Schmidt. Um, I look forward to it for I don't know how many weeks now, and we wanted to we Savvy and I wanted to get the questions from the standpoint of those of us who are out on the front lines talking to people. So we want to get, of course, we want to say the right thing. So we wanted to get it from the founder and the inventor of the patches. So David, thank you so much for being here tonight. We appreciate it. I want to give everybody just a little bit of background on this stem cell industry so that you can get the true grasp of what we have here with this X39 stem cell activation patch. There's this emerging industry worldwide going on with stem cell therapies. Doctors are injecting stem cells into joints. They're extracting them from umbilical cords of recent births. They're drilling into your bones and getting your bone marrow out and getting your stem cells. But they're very, very expensive. I had them done twice on both of my knees back in 2017, and my cost was $2,500 each. I think they are around 5 to 10,000. Correct me if I'm wrong, David, if you have an update on that. But they're very, very expensive. The most expensive ones I've heard of was 2 nights ago. We had Shelmadine Martinez on. She was giving her testimonial, and she has had lupus for a long time. She went down to Mexico when the stem cell industry was first starting, and it was 50,000. Wasn't able to do it. That's the most expensive I've heard of. So we have this stem cell industry is projected to be in 2022. It's projected to be $18 billion. All over the world, stem cells, the buzzword. For those of you who don't know, stem cells are the fix-a-crew. They go around and regenerate things and fix things, and they can become other cells. And we make a lot of them when we're younger, but that starts to decline as we get older. So, David, I have a little bit of background in medicine and science myself, and over the last 8 months, I can't tell you how many times I've thought, how in the world does somebody even think about this mechanism of stimulating the body that way with a little patch on the body? And I'm thinking about you sitting around saying, hey, I think I'll combine some amino acids and some salts, and it'll form its own little crystal lattice structure so I can reflect back a specific photon to stimulate the body to make more stem cells. So David, tell us what happens when we put that patch on our skin, and what does it do, please?
Okay. Well, if we were to go back in time a little bit to when I was first developing the technology, it really started with the basic idea of, could we turn on beta oxidation? Is there a way that we could increase fat burning? And I want to throw that out there as a concept for you all to think about, because this was really the beginning, the genesis of the technology. At the time, I owned a company with a few other friends, and we were developing survival equipment for the U.S. Navy through government contractors. And I was invited to be part of a design team for a mini sub. And I was asked, well, what do you think you can contribute to this project? And the crew of the mini sub were Navy SEALs. They were going to be going on missions where they had to stay awake for 30 hours, 60 hours at a time. And they would be taking caffeine, amphetamines, any type of these pep pills to stay awake longer. And I thought, I've been interested in health my entire life, and I prefer natural medicine. I wonder if there's any way that we could improve the energy and stamina of the crew without having to resort to stimulants. So I began thinking about this idea of wireless communication. We have cell phones today, we have satellite communications. Is there any way we could wirelessly communicate with the human body to give it more energy? So basic mechanism that I thought about was, as we age, our mitochondria begin to decline in efficiency, and we switch from predominantly burning fat or a blend of burning fat and carbohydrates more over to carbohydrate metabolism. And this, of course, eventually leads to mitochondrial dysfunction by the time we're around age 50 or so. So if we could turn back on fat burning and turn on beta oxidation, we'd get a number of very significant benefits. First benefit is people would feel an immediate effect of having more energy without having that crash from stimulants. And then secondly, this turned out to be a very powerful anti-aging effect, which I won't get into right now because that's a little bit of a longer story. But the basic idea was, let's stimulate the skin with very low levels of light and see if we could induce a specific metabolic change within the cell. So obviously, the first patch, the energy patches, are interfacing and stimulating the mitochondria as well as the electron transport chain to elevate beta oxidation. Now, later on, when I wanted to take the company in the direction of activating stem cells, I didn't start with phototherapy. I migrated to that later. I started with a device that I invented that produces this blend of electromagnetic and non-electromagnetic waves. And we found that with this technique that we could indeed activate stem cells, and that injections of stem cells were not necessarily needed. And we developed the technique over time. So to answer your question, that was a long way of going about it, but you take the patch, you put it on the skin, it's activated by your body heat, it will begin to reflect and stimulate the skin with very low levels of light. This in turn will stimulate the nerves and the acupuncture points on the surface of the skin, and this creates a phenomena called photobiomodulation. This is documented in over 5,000 clinical studies now. And as a result, we can activate specific receptors in the cells with light as opposed to drugs or herbs or vitamins. And in the case of X39, we're activating receptors that turn on the natural production of copper peptide, which is a master signaling molecule for stem cells.
Wow. Great. That I think Savvy has a question.
But I wanted to ask you, in compared to a stem cell shot, right? Does a stem cell shot elevate GHK copper peptides and also activate all those genes, over 4,100 genes?
No, it does not. So let's talk a little bit about this, because you're bringing up a very important point. If we were to look at what's it going to be like in the future, let's say 20 years down the road, when somebody goes to see their doctor, they go into a hospital, stem cell injections are going to be extremely common, and they're going to be hopefully much more affordable. And the science is going to be refined enough that someone who has diabetes, they'll be an outpatient. They'll be able to get an injection of stem cells, and they won't be a type 1 or type 2 diabetic anymore. And we're going to be treating heart disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all the same way with injections of stem cells. Now, for those that can afford it, stem cells will be a very powerful anti-aging technology and technique. And the reason for this is that if we can get young, healthy cells and inject them into the body, and they know how to differentiate, then we're replacing older cells with young, healthy cells. But we're not there today, not with stem cell injections. So to answer your question, using stem cell injections is fine, but it's certainly not the only answer, and it's not necessarily working the way the human body was designed. So the human body, if we want to break this down into very simplistic terms just for the moment, a human body depends on energy and communication. So every cell has to make or use energy, and it has to be able to communicate both inside of the cell and also with its outside environment. And there are signaling molecules, these are hormones and peptides that are part of the communication system. So one of the challenges that stem cell researchers are facing today is that stem cell injections are not always safe. The stem cells can attack healthy tissue, and they also don't always work. So one of the things that was discovered in Southern California is that you inject stem cells and they're attracted to inflammation. They're attracted to inflammatory cytokines. The downside to this is that when the stem cells get to the site of inflammation, it's the inflammation that kills them. So this is a little bit like the moth to the flame phenomena. So this explains why people can get an injection of stem cells for chronic injury and not necessarily heal. It's because the inflammation was inhibiting the ability of the stem cells to function. We used to see this in our work at the National University of Ireland, where you could inject a colony of 2 million stem cells, and within an hour, there might be 200,000 stem cells that would be left. So what's the answer here? Well, what if we work with the natural communication system of the body? What is signaling and guiding stem cells? One of the master peptides is copper peptide, or GHK and GHK-Cu. And the advantage here, to your point, is that we can inject stem cells into the body, but we're not going to elevate copper peptide. We're not going to reset the cells to a younger state. We're not going to be affecting the P63 gene, which allows them to mobilize. And then also as important, we're not going to revert the stem cells that are in the skin to pluripotent cells to act as reinforcement to increase the number of circulating stem cells. So the beauty of this is that in some ways, X39 has many more advantages other than simply cost when you compare it to a stem cell injection.
So that was my exact point. So what I'm seeing here with the X39 is I get GHK copper peptides elevated, which are epigenetic and regulating over 4,100 genes, and they're universal. So I was questioning if a stem cell shot could do those things, and if the stem cells from a shot are also universal, right? Because I knew that in some cases, certain sensitive people get this inflammatory response, and it ends up being a little bit of a negative for them. Because I went and talked about getting a stem cell injection myself, and the doctor mentioned that to me. He said, "Does that hurt?" I had an injury. He said, "Does that hurt?" And I said, "It does not hurt." He said, "Well, when I get done with it, it could very well hurt." And I'm like, "I'm not going to spend $5,000, to basically make it worse. And then will it work or not? Because
Right.
it can take 6 or 9 months to actually find out if it works, right?" So one more question before I give it back to Dr. Harmon. Just so that we say this correctly to people. Does the X39 give us new young stem cells if you're, say, 70 years old, or does it just give me more volume of stem cells?
It's really doing both. So let's walk through this because this is an important subject. And there's quite a bit of literature, about 50 years worth of literature, thanks to Dr. Lauren Picard, on the benefits of GHK and GHK-Cu, as well as the clinical studies that we've done on X39. And the type of things that we've looked at, because Dr. Picard has done the gene mapping data and also has collected the stem cell data, the things we look at is first we need to substantiate through blood testing, which we've done, that X39 does elevate GHK and GHK-Cu. We've done the metabolic testing through urine analysis. We've looked at the effects on the brain, the effects on the heart. We've looked at the inflammatory response now. We're pursuing some other lines of research that are extremely interesting that we'll be releasing that data in the coming months. But when we look at the activity of stem cells in the body, it becomes apparent that when you have individuals over the age of 60 and over the age of 70, which we use in our clinical studies. That would be the inclusion criteria. We want to, for brain mapping, for example, in the studies that we're conducting with Dr. Chevalier, we specifically want to work with individuals over the age of 60 because we know the quality of the stem cells in those individuals are not very good. The number of stem cells have declined, and the ability of the stem cells to mobilize and release growth factors for tissue repair has also been severely compromised. We also know in those individuals that the levels of copper peptide are going to parallel the decline in stem cell activity. So after the age of 60, we expect that the levels of copper peptide will have declined about 60 to 80%, and that directly parallels the decrease in the activity of the stem cells. So the beauty of this is that of what happens when you increase copper peptide. If you take a population of liver cells, for example, from someone that's 75 or 80 years old, and then you incubate those cells in media and you add copper peptide, those cells start to become indistinguishable from a younger, healthier cell. We've upregulated mitochondrial function. As you've pointed out, we've altered gene expression, and now these cells can start to behave like younger cells and release growth factors more efficiently. In some people, the age reversal is quite dramatic. Other people, it's a little bit more mild. It depends on the general state and health of the individual that we're working with.
Yeah.
But the long story short is that because copper peptide is capable of reverting skin stem cells to pluripotent cells, now we get an increase in the total number of stem cells in the body, and now these stem cells are going to function more efficiently. So it's really the best of both worlds.
Okay, so that was my other question. So the X39 is pulling the new stem cells from the skin, not so much from bone marrow, from the skin, right?
Right. Yeah, the bone marrow stem cells. So if we look at a stem cell that would be used in research, and one of the stem cells that we've used, those are MSCs, and MSCs, mesenchymal stem cells. And if I pronounce that differently from some other people, it's because I'm from New Jersey. And as my kids are fond of pointing out, I often mispronounce things. But in any case, the MSC stem cells are going to be releasing growth factors, and they take place, that they're present in the repair of damaged tissue. So that's what we would normally associate with a stem cell injection. And in this particular case, we look at a pluripotent cell as being an extremely powerful cell because it can differentiate into a multipotent cell and then into whatever tissue it's going to become, muscle tissue, liver tissue, kidney tissue. So this technique is actually much more powerful than using MSCs.
So there you go. So for pennies on the dollar, you actually have something that does more than a stem cell injection. Dr. Harmon, I should pass it back to you.
Well, thank you. I want to just spell that pluripotent is Pluri, for those of you who want to look that up. My second question, David, has to do with how we, as people out on the front lines talking to people, we're often asked to about specific disorders and things like this, and we're well trained that we don't do that we don't diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. That's well established in our community. But there's a different question that needs to be answered at this time. And let's say somebody has an autoimmune disease. If someone's immune system is overactive, it seems like we wouldn't want to, increase their stem cells and activate their immune system. Yet we have hundreds and hundreds of testimonials of people who do have autoimmune diseases who've responded remarkably well. And in fact, some of them don't even have symptoms anymore. And the same is true that we want to know about people on immunosuppressant drugs. So the question is, are there some contraindications or reasons why someone would not want to use the X39 for the potential harm? Are there any contraindications that we need to be concerned about?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Let's take the easy one first. Well, they're both actually pretty easy to answer, but let's talk about when someone has a organ transplant and they're specifically on drugs to suppress immune activity. This would be a pretty clear case where we would say we could not recommend the use of X39 or any of our other patches at this time. We haven't conducted any research with a population like this, and so we really don't know how the body would respond. We can create a hypothesis, but I would say there could be a substantial risk of trying to improve the immune response with someone that has had an organ transplant. So I would have to advise against it in the absence of any type of clinical or scientific studies. Now, on the other hand, when we're talking about a autoimmune disorder, we have in fact studied in hospitals osteoarthritis, our Icewave patch and our Eon patch. We conducted this study with Dr. Pierre Volkmann at General de Santé in Lyon, France. And that was a really fun experience because in the demonstration, many of the French scientists and doctors that I've met over the years are quite skeptical. They're great people, but they tend to be a little skeptical. And they gave me 32 patients to patch within about a period of an hour, and 32 out of 32 people got out of pain. And they said, okay, it seems there's something here. Let's go ahead and do the clinical study, which we did. And the clinical study was a little bit limiting in the parameters, but we still got, I think it was 96% of the people that participated got pain relief. So, and that was in a population of people that had osteoarthritis. So as a practical matter, over the years, we have worked with people that have Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, fibromyalgia, Epstein-Barr, and this would be in an anecdotal case. We've studied osteoarthritis clinically, but things like Parkinson's we have not studied clinically. This is just practical experience. And in each particular case, we see that the person's symptoms improve. So we're not making a claim of disease treatment. We're talking about pain management and management of symptoms. So one of the ways that we could characterize disease is through the inflammatory response and the response that the body has to oxidative stress and inflammatory markers. So we know that when an injury occurs, that the production of oxidative chemicals and inflammation at the injury site is quite necessary, because this response will help to suppress bacterial infection. The inflammatory response is going to actually initiate healing, and eventually the stem cells are attracted over into the site. But as time goes by and the communication system in the cell begins to break down, now the inflammation is going to accumulate, and as the inflammation accumulates, it makes it very difficult to heal, and now immune cells can attack healthy tissue, you know, just as an example. So what do we do then to resolve this issue and resolve this disorder without having to resort to drugs or traditional anti-inflammatories? Well, what we want to do is normalize and manage the oxidative response and the inflammatory response. So with X39, the two of the products we have are X39 and Eon, and they're going to do this in very different ways. With X39, it occurs through gene expression. So as we age, there are going to be genes that are off and then turn on, and then the opposite, genes that are on and then they turn off. And part of what we want to accomplish with age reversal, which is really the goal of this company, what we ultimately want to reach, part of this is in epigenetics, where we want to continue to introduce new and powerful gene modulators that can reset the human genome back to a younger, healthier state. So if we take this approach, there's no reason why somebody couldn't be effectively 25, and as long as they could maintain other aspects of their health. But one of the things that's been discovered about copper peptide is that in resetting the genes, we manage inflammation and we also manage the immune response. So not surprisingly, when we've studied X39, we see a improvement in the health of the gut. So, and of course also a improvement in the thymus. So the immune system does in fact improve. With EON, it works a little bit differently, or actually significantly differently. The EON patch is designed to elevate a peptide in the liver called phenylacetylglutamine. And I don't often really talk about this because it's just a little bit of noise to our members, but since you're all doctors, I can get into this a little bit more detail. But this peptide specifically is very interesting because it's part of the primitive immune system. And although it's not an antioxidant, it will induce antioxidant activities in the cell. So it will upregulate production of SOD. And as a result, you see broad spectrum reduction of different types of inflammatory markers, such as CRPs, inflammatory cytokines, homocysteine, lipid peroxide, fibrinogen. And so this is another reason why clinically X39 and EON are so powerful. You have a patient with a chronic injury, apply EON to the site of the injury for pain management, reduction in inflammation, and it actually makes X39 work that much better.
Wow, that's fantastic. I appreciate that detail. I have just a little bit of a follow-up question on the same lines. Over the last 8 months, I've seen people have huge life-altering benefit in just a few days, 4 or 5 days. And it sounds like they're telling me about a dream they had. And look at them, this person wouldn't lie to me. I believe them and I see it. Yet others take a little longer. And some people I've talked to, that they might have been on the patch for 2 or 3 months and they say they didn't notice much. Now, I know, and everybody knows that unless you have something that you can measure, you're not going to feel your liver regenerating or your bones getting more density in them. So we don't know that. Could you explain some of the reasons why some people respond so quickly and others maybe take months? I know I wasn't one of those people who had this huge shift. It took 2 months and then 4.5 months for me to get it. So I understand that, and I can convey that to people that I talk to. But others, it's a little bit difficult if it's your dad, and your dad wants his back pain, the severely degenerated discs that are bulging and spurs are pushing on the nerves, but he wants that pain to go away tomorrow. And sometimes it gets a little frustrating as a rep that if it doesn't happen as quickly. So if you could give us the guidance, that would be very helpful, I believe.
Yeah, certainly. Sometimes the solution is simple, and then other times it's a little bit more complex. One of the things that I encourage and the company encourages is for people to build up their foundation. So in other words, you do a self-check, or of course, as doctors, you encourage your patients to have a healthy diet, supplement where needed, get adequate amounts of sleep, exercise, get resistance training, get plenty of good clean water, and stay away from things that we know are harmful, like excessive amounts of alcohol and cigarettes and drugs. So I think an individual needs to take that self-assessment, because the more areas that we can fill in and improve are better chances for success. So in some cases, you mentioned bulging discs. So this is going to be, more than likely a chronic injury. I would use a combination of Eon, Icewave, and X39. So I would use the Icewave patches for immediate pain relief. I would use Eon for reducing the inflammation, and then I would use X39 for the long-term benefit. So I think what we find as a practical matter is that in many individuals, X39 by itself is fine, but some individuals, especially those with chronic injuries, will benefit more if they use the Eon patch, reduce the inflammation, and now the stem cells can get in there and do a more efficient job. Now, sometimes we look at energetic mechanisms. So we go back to the roots of acupuncture and say, well, acupuncture is all about using the meridian system as a communication system. And why is it that sometimes the nervous system and the meridian system fails? And that's from deficiencies in electrolytes, which maintain those channels. So when people have deficiencies in magnesium, potassium, calcium, this can all impact their results. As we know, at least 60% of the population have magnesium deficiencies, and magnesium participates in over 300 different biochemical pathways in the body, as well as acting as a electrolyte. So these would be the type of things that people should take a look at. Are they really covering the basics? Could they have a nutritional deficiency? Is it chronic inflammation? And the good news is that there's answers to all of these things. We just need to find out for each individual what's going to work best for them.
So you need to cover the foundational things that will affect your body's ability to even heal. And that would explain why some people don't respond quickly. I think Savvy has a follow-up question. Is that correct, Savvy?
Yeah, he had me fired up. One of the things that I loved about him when I first saw him ever speak, he didn't just talk about light frequency patches. He talked about minerals, herbs, vitamins, and I was like, okay, this fella has it all. Okay, he's singing my song, in other words, right? And so working as a detox guy, you find out almost everybody has a messed up gut. And when I started looking at the X39 and GHK copper peptides boost collagen, the glue in the body, and works directly on repairing gut tissue. And lung tissue seems to be a big deal with GHK copper peptides. So we have these COPD people in our group doing much, much better. And then we have folks that were nutrient deficient. And so whenever I come across somebody who says, it happened in 2 days for this guy, 2 months for this guy, 6 months for this guy, I always go where the variables are in line with nutrient bucket and toxicity bucket, right? And so we're all the same, but we're all different with nutrients and toxicity. And so that's where the minerals come into play, right? So, you know, I used to work with Dr. Wallach for a while, and he's the mineral doctor, right? And so he says out of his 90 essential nutrients, 60 are minerals, and they're not really in the food anymore. So you kind of have to supplement with plant-derived minerals. And then we know that vitamin C is intimately involved with collagen production. And vitamin C is really effective at helping the adrenal glands. So when he said that, that resonates with me. And just to make you feel good, David, when we get just back to the autoimmune conditions, recently we had a gal named Rose with 60 years rheumatoid arthritis and other problems. She tried everything, including stem cell injections and IV drips, tens of thousands of dollars. And in 18 days, okay, that's fast, with rheumatoid arthritis, 18 days out of pain. And when she did her testimonial, she was already 218 days in and still pain-free from a magical little Band-Aid. So
That's amazing. That's wonderful.
Just say that.
It is.
Yes, thank you.
Well, my next question has to do with the process called apoptosis. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's programmed cellular death. The body seeks and destroys 50 to 70 billion cells a day because they're old, they're sick, they're dying, and it needs to recycle them. So my question, David, is, do you think when all of a sudden the body has these stem cells and it sees an opening, I mean, there's a lot of wisdom going on there, infinite intelligent wisdom. This is something that I've thought might happen, and explain why some people, all of a sudden, some weeks or months down the road, they go through this process where they feel worse temporarily and feel flu-like symptoms. And we've talked about detoxing and those kind of things, but do you think maybe when the body sees an opening that it might destroy more because, hey, I can make better cells now? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, what I think about it is that the subject of apoptosis and autophagy are going to be critically important in the next generation of age reversal products that are coming to market. I was a speaker at RADFest this year, and you get some brilliant minds from around the world speaking at that conference. So it was really a privilege for me to have been invited this year. And, so the subject of senolytics and being able to remove dead cells is critically important to ultimately an age reversal strategy. And the easy way to understand this is that once cells die, if they're not eliminated and they hang around, then they're going to be causing, they're going to act as a free radical and damage neighboring cells. And then this, in fact, can induce a autoimmune disorder. So removal of dead and damaged tissue is critically important. Now, the first strategy actually that I would recommend for people is fasting. It's very well known that fasting is a tried and true method of removing dead cells, of engaging autophagy, and doesn't have to be anything too extreme. There are many different thoughts on this and studies, and there's some contradictory information, but generally speaking, intermittent fasting, I think, is the least severe and works very well. So eating within an 8-hour window and then fasting for 16 hours. So that's a tool that's available today. Now, there are nutrients that are coming to light, such as fisetin, which seems to it seems to promote autophagy. We'll have to see how the clinical studies bear out on that, but that looks very promising. And so fisetin is a phytonutrient that's found in vegetables. Now, with respect to X39, as to whether or not copper peptide will induce apoptosis or autophagy in cells, I'm not aware of any clinical studies that have been done, that have been completed in that regard, that would tell us that for certain. So I can't say definitively. Totally possible. I wouldn't rule it out, but it hasn't been clinically substantiated.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I want to say something, but I want to preface it with that I'm not making any diagnoses or anything like that. But I have to tell you, I have seen such a wide variety of things get better very quickly, that it makes me think that this X39 and these other patches, that there isn't any aspect of healthcare that cannot benefit from this. And when you put that in the context of the health of our community, the health of our state, the health of we have the possibility of decreasing our healthcare costs by just simply healing things. And I want to put that out there to everybody on this call, the doctors on this call, the medical doctors, the chiropractors. You can implement these in your practice really quickly. We've already shown lots of doctors how to do it. It's not a this or that. Is if you do stem cell injections, add this to your protocols, and you'll get better results. If you're a chiropractor, your patients need to hold their adjustments. You're going to get more referrals if they do. Get them on the patch. It helps repair collagen. Everybody on this call needs to get the magnitude of what we have, and I think everybody does. And we have a bunch of people who care about people and light workers and energy workers, and we truly have the possibility of changing healthcare and cutting all of our costs down.